October 28th, 2025, 1248 Eastern Pacific. The first sign wasn't dramatic. No alarms, no shouting, just a spike on the infrared console of a P-8A Poseidon drifting 31000 feet above a patch of dark water 170 nautical miles west of Panama. A long, steady heat bloom, too uniform for a freighter, too large for a trawler. The computer tagged it automatically. 346 feet in length, metallic hull, multiple internal hotspots, 6 distinct reactors, burning bright through steel plating. Onboard Lieutenant Sarah Coleman called it in without looking away from the screen. Within seconds, the data streamed through encrypted Link 16 channels to Task Force Trident in San Diego. For months, those screens had shown nothing but disappointment. Tonight, they showed history. The analysts didn't need confirmation. The signature was too precise. Industrial reactors, evenly spaced heat pulse intervals matching chemical distillation cycles. 96.9% probability. Target identified Santa Muerte. For 15 months, this ship had been a phantom vanishing between satellite passes, slipping through storm bands, hiding under civilian traffic. Each time an intercept team closed in the vessel, used hostages as armor, and vanished into international waters. But now, its luck had expired. The Poseidon's radar had her pinned, and the Pacific Command silence said everything. At 12:53 a.m., San Diego relayed coordinates to the Pentagon. At 2:00 a.m. Eastern, a secure call reached the White House. The briefing was simple. A 320-ton industrial hull operating as a floating narcotics refinery. Cargo manifest 30 tons of heroin, 42 of cocaine, 20 of crystal meth. Estimated street value $12 billion. Estimated human cost uncountable. Below deck, 300 captives from 17 nations forced to work 16-hour shifts under electric discipline. Some had been missing for over a year. The ship's architect, Gonzalo El Azabache Morales, had turned maritime smuggling into industrial slavery. His network's resume included kidnappings, organ harvesting, and broadcast executions. An enterprise so grotesque that even the cartels kept their distance. The U.S. Navy called him the ghost manufacturer. The DEA called him a statistical anomaly. But in San Diego's ops room, he was now just a target with coordinates. At 2:12 a.m. After a 10-minute consult, Operation Iron Tide was approved. Orders issued: locate, contain, and neutralize Santa Muerte with 0 civilian loss. A mission profile drawn in less than 8 minutes, the fastest inter-service authorization since Desert Storm. One officer later remarked that the room went from caffeine to silence in record time. From the Poseidon's tail camera, the ocean below was featureless black, a perfect void except for one faint glow, a line of heat just beneath the surface like a candle behind frosted glass. The radar cross-section confirmed it, a massive, low-profile vessel, running dark, no AIS, no transponder, no running lights, dead to civilian systems, alive on every military frequency. The Poseidon's crew switched to passive mode, engines throttled low. Every ping now mattered. Inside the command center, analysts began stitching a timeline. Santa Muerte had been built from the hull of a decommissioned Panamax cargo ship, stripped, plated, and rebuilt into what one engineer called a chemical city at sea. The 6 reactor signatures indicated independent drug labs running in tandem: heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, all venting waste heat through hidden exhaust ducts near the waterline. The line was so efficient it fooled satellites by dispersing thermal output into ocean currents. Ingenious if you ignored the screaming inside. For months, the hunt had been an exercise in frustration. The Poseidon squadrons nicknamed it Chasing Smoke. But tonight, the smoke glowed like a beacon. The odds of another false positive were less than 1%. The task force commander simply said, "Lock it. Don't blink." At 12:58 a.m. radar range, 142 nautical miles, bearing 211. Target speed 9 knots. The P-8 Amperes' optical pod switched to high-gain mode, magnifying through darkness until the camera caught the faint glimmer of navigation lights, quickly extinguished once the crew below realized they'd been seen. It didn't matter. The Americans already had the geometry. By 1:04 a.m., every listening post along the Pacific data chain from Coronado to Key West was watching a single moving dot labeled SM-01. Inside the Poseidon, the crew ran one last confirmation sweep. Thermal imaging magnetic anomaly detection radar contour. Perfect match. After 15 months of evasion, Santa Muerte had resurfaced, the largest floating drug factory in recorded history. Somewhere in its hull, 300 enslaved workers waited, without knowing the Navy had finally found them. In San Diego, the operations board lit up with a single line of green text: "Target confirmed. Mission status active." No celebration, no speeches. Just one comment from the tactical officer, half murmured over his headset, "About time the ghost showed up." And with that, the Pacific Fleet began to move. Quietly, methodically, like gravity returning to a long-tilted world. By the time Operation Iron Tide received its final green light, the Pacific was still asleep, except for every ship, drone, and submarine within 1,000 nautical miles, now quietly adjusting course. From satellites to sonar buoys, an invisible perimeter began to tighten around Santa Muerte. The order was simple: surround, silence, strike. At 2:16 a.m., encrypted command packets left San Diego's relay tower, bouncing through 4 satellites and 1 Navy relay plane before reaching the first unit on station, a Virginia-class submarine designated SSN 789 Delaware. Its captain didn't need the full briefing. One line of code was enough. Begin Phase 1. Beneath 300 feet of Pacific water, the Delaware's sonar array came alive. Broadband pings fanned outward in controlled intervals, triangulating Santa Muerte's position down to within 90 meters. The target was moving north-northwest at 8.7 knots, unaware that its own radar was already being drowned in electromagnetic haze. 24 Hammerhead X submersibles, small torpedo-sized drones designed for electronic warfare, deployed from 3 separate U.S. Navy ships sinking into the black like metallic sharks. The job wasn't destruction, but blindness. Each emitted a rotating pattern of magnetic interference and radar noise, creating what the Navy calls a digital cage. At 2:23 a.m., that cage snapped shut. On Santa Muerte's bridge, mercenaries noticed it first. The radar froze mid-sweep. The GPS lost lock. Radio channels turned to static. For a moment, confusion reigned. A deckhand tapped the console. A second slapped the transponder housing. Nothing. It was as if the ocean itself had gone offline. The ship's navigation lights flickered, then died completely. In a matter of seconds, the world's most sophisticated criminal vessel had gone blind and deaf. Back in the sky, the Poseidon watched from 31000 feet. Its thermal sensors saw the ship's power grid spike and then flatten as automatic systems failed. The ocean around it was still black, but the sky above was no longer empty. At 2:26 a.m., the second wave began. 42 stealth UAVs, code named Spectre Hawks, broke through thin clouds like ghosts. Each one no larger than a surfboard radar cross-section, smaller than a pelican but carrying precision-guided microcharges. The flight path was autonomous. Every drone had already assigned itself a sentry to eliminate. From the Poseidon's infrared feed, the scene looked clinical. Tiny bursts of orange light blinked across the deck, each precisely placed. No shock waves, no rolling explosions, just a pattern of surgical eliminations. In 49 seconds, 38 armed guards were neutralized. Their bodies fell quietly against steel that no longer answered its own alarms. Inside the U.S. command net, an operator's voice broke the silence. Outer perimeter cleared. 0 civilian signatures compromised. By 2:28, the ocean around Santa Muerte was officially hostile territory. 12 Virginia-class submarines surfaced in a wide ring water, cascading off their hulls in eerie symmetry. From each came teams of Navy SEALs and Delta operators, 480 men moving with mechanical precision. Their faces obscured behind NVG masks, their rifles equipped with subsonic suppressors. The sea accepted them silently as they began the climb. At 2:30 a.m. boarding commenced. Steel hooks bit into the hull. Lines tightened. One after another, dark figures ascended the dripping walls of the ship that had terrorized 2 continents. They moved fast, 12 seconds per man from waterline to deck. Overhead, 3 drones circled low, emitting faint strobe patterns designed to distract any remaining sentries still alive. On Santa Muerte, chaos finally bloomed. Someone shouted. Someone fired. The muzzle flashes were bright enough to expose the shooters, and that was all it took. Within 5 seconds, the return fire ended the conversation. At 2:31 a.m., internal breaching began. Team Alpha moved through a maintenance hatch starboard side. Team Bravo through the aft service corridor. Thermographic overlays guided them past bulkheads and fuel lines. Each team had 90 seconds to reach its designated compartment. Time was oxygen. Below decks, the ship was a labyrinth of chemical tanks and makeshift cages. Infrared sensors picked up heat from hundreds of bodies. Civilians huddled, restrained, unaware that freedom was now only meters away. Team Charlie marked the section but held fire. Rescuing hostages would come later. First, the reactors. Above the Poseidon relayed live telemetry to the San Diego Ops Room, where technicians plotted every SEAL's position on a 3-dimensional render of Santa Muerte. Green blips advanced through red zones like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. By 2:35 a.m., over half the vessel was under U.S. control. The mercenaries, leaderless and disoriented, fired sporadically, but their rounds found only bulkheads. Every time a muzzle flash appeared, a suppressed burst of light answered, and silence followed. At 2:38, thermal imagery confirmed it all: external decks secure, interior sections isolated, civilians unharmed. The Santa Muerte, once a ghost built on billions in blood, now floated powerless, surrounded by the quiet machinery of American precision. One line of text appeared on the command display in San Diego: Phase 2 complete. Beneath it, a single reminder typed by the tactical officer in green font: now comes the hard part. Inside. By 03:05, the shooting had stopped. Santa Muerte, the ship that had outsmarted a dozen navies, now drifted silent and blind, surrounded by American steel. Floodlights from 3 destroyers painted its hull white. The Pacific, normally restless, looked like it was holding its breath. Inside, 6 SEAL teams cleared the remaining decks. Team Alpha breached the bridge. Flashbang's first questions: never. Morales' elite guards, 18 in total, were eliminated in 40 seconds. Each one fell before they could even reach their triggers. Team Bravo swept the weapons bay, navigating a web of tripwires strung like metallic cobwebs. Using fiber optics, they mapped and disarmed 4 detonators designed to blow the ship if cornered. For a $12 billion empire, the fail-safes were crude. The SEALs called it cheap insurance. Below deck, Team Charlie reached the reason this mission existed: the cargo hold turned prison block. 300 civilians, weak, silent, some barely able to stand. The air was ammonia and diesel, the smell of chemical residue, and months without sunlight. When the SEALs cut through the locks, no one cheered. No one moved at first. Then one man whispered Americans, and the entire hold began to stir. It took 9 minutes and 32 seconds from first breach to total control. Every lab, every corridor, every heat source on the thermal map went green. Operation Iron Tide had succeeded without a single civilian casualty. The U.S. flag now shimmered in the glare of portable lamps hoisted on Santa Muerte's deck, an unofficial signal to the fleet that the nightmare was over. By 0320, medics from the USS Arlington and Coast Guard cutter Stratton swarmed aboard. The deck became a floating field hospital. Triage tents unfolded, IV lines hung from railings, and the first taste of clean water brought more tears than words. Some hostages were American fishermen missing for months. One was a retired firefighter from Houston, another a young engineer from Texas. None had expected to see daylight again. Down below, Navy EOD specialists cataloged evidence. The haul was staggering: 30 tons of heroin, 42 of cocaine, 20 of crystal meth, 6 operational reactors still hot when the SEALs entered. Over 300 military-grade weapons, many traced back to illegal exports from Europe and North Africa. 8 encrypted hard drives, later found to contain bank accounts and shipping manifests, linking 3 continents. Every barrel crate and blood-stained ledger was a story of profit and misery, now logged under U.S. custody. At 0413 a.m., a blacked-out MH-60 Seahawk touched down on the deck. Its rotors whipped mist into the floodlights as Team Echo escorted a single-hooded prisoner, Gonzalo El Azabache Morales. His bare feet scraped the steel, his silence louder than any confession. For 4 years, he had built a fortress of drugs and fear. It fell in less than 10 minutes. The Seahawk lifted off toward an undisclosed facility. Morales didn't look back. Neither did the men who captured him. By 0440, the cleanup began. Chemists sealed reactors. Divers inspected the hull for structural stress. Radio silence lifted, and the first encrypted transmission went out, objective secured. 0 civilian loss. 2 operators wounded stable. In San Diego, the message appeared on the wall of screens. The room stayed quiet. No applause, no grandstanding. Just the sound of keyboards and the steady hum of air conditioning. The commanding officer finally spoke, mission logged. Review at 0600. When dawn broke over the Pacific, sunlight spilled across twisted steel and scorched plating. The ship that once poisoned oceans now floated like a husk. On its bridge rail, a small U.S. flag fluttered, standard Navy issue 3x 5 feet, looking like victory itself. At 0502 a.m., a final transmission came from the strike group commander aboard the Arlington, Operation Iron Tide complete. All hostages safe. The ocean is ours again. In a world where chaos sells headlines, this operation barely made one. But for the sailors, aviators, and analysts who spent 15 months chasing a ghost, the silence afterward was the reward. A $12 billion empire erased in under 10 minutes. 300 souls freed. 2 men injured, none lost. And one message carved forever into naval history: precision isn't glory, it's survival. The sea rolled on, indifferent as ever, but for once it was quiet.